Oh, here we go.
Ooh. Hi.
Oh,
Hello, gorgeous.
hello. How are you? Hello.
Hello.
Wow, it's gonna be a lot of this, isn't it?
Yes. All right. I guess we're ready.
We're ready?
We're ready.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, there's people coming in.
And people are coming in.
Come in, people. I was like, oh, only 9 people have come.
You see you all coming in.
Oh, I see there's a chat. I'm gonna open the chat. Oh my God, I'm excited too. I have to warn you guys of 2 things. We are fostering a dog who has only been with us for 2 days, so who knows what might happen. But he's doing really good. He went for a long walk, so he should be all right. And also, I've been doing press for like 4 hours, so I'm incredibly punchy. So I don't know what might come out of my mouth.
All right.
So Aman's dogs might make an appearance too, so.
Yes, I realize with the Matt Shackman chat that it's just nice to have them around. People like them, and
Is one of them on the couch? Yes, there's one on the couch behind you.
Hi everyone. We have a lot of people in the chat. Let's see names.
There will be no Rule of Wolves spoilers. I do not expect people to have caught up.
So, it's Chandler polling. Do you know, Leigh, do you know Chandler? So Chandler is, so Joseph Trapanese, who I'm a huge fan of, did the score for the TV series, and Chandler is his publicist, actually.
No way! Hello! That's
also
so beautiful. It's so good.
I actually was playing Ravka in the background before just to get in the mood.
I love it. I absolutely, I will tell you a story about that I subjected Joe to my singing when I met him for the first time. I was like, here's what I want it to sound like. And implicitly it does not sound like that because I am not a great singer. But
I beg to differ. But
this was at the alcove in Silver Lake. So I can only imagine what the people around us were like when I'm like singing like my grandmother's old Russian lullaby. I was like, what's happening? Yeah.
Well, I beg to differ because I remember coming to see you sing with Captain Automatic at the Silver Lake Lounge.
Okay.
And more than once, I've on more than one occasion, but my favorite song from Captain Automatic is one you wrote and sang, which was a sea shanty.
We actually recorded that. And okay, we're already into the fun fact section of this. So
I know.
The lyrics from Surfers and Sailors, I tweaked to be Soldiers and Sailors, and those lyrics appear in Six of Crows, briefly, just a few of the lines, and one of the soldiers sings that song at the top of one of the episodes of Shadow and Bone. So Captain Automatic, if I haven't, and Josh is here, which makes me so happy. I love that.
Tell the people who don't know what Captain Automatic is.
No, then they'll Google it.
Oh, okay, sorry, never mind. Actually, so let me just do a quick, oh, Belinda, did you have something you wanted to?
No, sorry. Actually, I wanted to ask Leigh about Captain Automatic because I saw it too, and I was like, oh, she's in a band. And back in Silver Lake when I was like going to a lot of them.
Oh,
so that's all.
It's okay.
It's just between
I'm
us
not
and
ashamed of the band. It's one of those it feels like, I mean, it's not the same as having like a nude photo, but it just feels weirdly exposing. But yes, I was in a band called Captain Automatic. We were super nerdy. Josh Kamensky, who I met at Yale, was who brought me into that band. And I will also say they saw me through the writing.
Josh is here.
Josh was my first, he and Michelle Chihara, also from Yale, were my first readers for Shadow and Bone.
Michelle Chihara is also here. She's in the comments.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, when I got my first book deal, we all danced and drank at Mishi's house. I'm getting emotional because it was a very dark time for me, and they were there to see me come through it. So I love them.
And here you are. Here
I am.
So listen, so we're about 5 minutes after, and we have about 250 people and stayed around there. So should we officially start this party? Should I just do a little kickoff? And
sure. I'm just gonna, since we mentioned Michelle Chihara, she says, hello, my question is, oh my God, how excited is it possible to be for the show?
Very excited.
Lots of people excited for the show in the comments, and I will hand it off to Kathleen to get us rolling.
Well, we're already rolling. I feel like I'm kind of a little bit putting on the brakes, but I just want to make sure that everybody, just welcome everyone, say hello. Thank you so much for joining our secret, we're calling this, Leigh, our secret spotlight chat. With Leigh Bardugo, who is, everybody here knows the bio, but let's just say it because, oh my God, I love saying it. The #1 New York Times bestselling author of the Grishaverse series, of Ninth House, executive producer of the impending Netflix series Shadow and Bone, newly minted Yale fellow, all around just badass and gorgeous human being inside and out. Leigh, I'm gonna cry. I haven't seen you in so long.
I already cried once and we were only like a minute into the chat. So let's not do that again. That's like, it's quite embarrassing.
Get ready, kids. This is what it's gonna be like. So we are, so I'm Kathleen, a friend of Leigh's from Yale. I'm a storyteller myself. So Heidi and Belinda are here. They're from YaleWomen, and we are so grateful for their help. We do want you talking to each other, talking to us in chat. Also, we don't have an end time. So for those of you who are like, hey, when is this over?
We're gonna be here for at least 2 days. Really real with each other. I don't even know what.
But also Aman is here. You've seen him talking, Aman, the co-host, who also knows Leigh from college, but also from high school. Aman, say hello to the people.
Hi, people. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. Yes. So Leigh and I go way back. We actually met in the little village of Anatevka.
We were in a production of Fiddler on the Roof together. I was Yenta the matchmaker. So I was keeping it sexy for moment one, let's be honest.
Well, you were like the youngest person. You're the youngest person in the cast, and you played like one of the oldest people in the cast, because you played Yenta, who's like the older, Baba Yaga type of.
I feel like I was a wizened crone from the time I was 5. Like I have been an old woman my whole life, so it was only natural for me to play Yenta.
Yeah, so we've been friends from high school, and then, since then, we both live in Los Angeles. I'm an artist and illustrator and entertainment. And as you heard us mention, like we've hung out, I've gotten to see the band play, we've gone to Michelle's house to watch Game of Thrones and stuff like that. But anyway, I also, as Kathleen was saying, I am super biased, but I'm just so super, super excited for the show. Like, I mean, what's funny is like, yes, I'm so biased. Like I actually have like the advanced copy that you gave me before the book came out. Like this is the copy that I read. So I'm biased, but I love the books. I love the books. The show looks amazing. When you first gave me this and I read it, I was like, this is going to be on screen. Like this has to be on screen. It's beautiful. Like the characters, the world, the costumes, like all the little details, like the details down to the embroidery will have to be on screen, and they are, and it's super exciting. So you have so much going on. You have the show Shadow and Bone coming up. Rule of Wolves just came out. You have Ninth House came out. Lots of, I always hear people, especially in the Yale groups, talking about that. You're working on the sequel to Ninth House. You're Yale fellow now. And Ninth House is also Amazon Studios will be doing that.
Yes,
so,
I'm currently revising the pilot for that. So
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. So all these things happening at once. What are you most excited about right now?
I mean, right now the show is, first of all, I see somebody being like, how do you make time for it all? And I don't. The answer is I don't. I'm really behind on the sequel to Ninth House, and I apologize. Holly Black, who is an amazing writer and a friend of mine, if you haven't read her books, you should. But she said to me, the problem with doing 2 series is you will always feel like you're letting someone down. So I'm sorry, because I'm absolutely letting you guys down. But yeah, to be completely candid, for the last, while I've been doing the adaptation work for Ninth House, mostly I've just been focused on the show. We've been doing press, which I've never done before, which is weird, exhausting and strange, and people keep calling the books my babies, which I fucking hate. Sorry, I shouldn't swear. Right, for children. It's just been an incredible moment, but also a completely overwhelming one. So, yeah.
Well, we're pretty excited about the series too, and we have to tell you that Aman and I were like, okay, let's do a reaction video about the trailer, and it started, and we were both like, oh my god, it's happening.
That was my response too. I cried through the entirety of the teaser trailer, which is like a solid 2.5 minutes long, like just wept, and then the trailer as well. So that's been my MO this whole time.
And I have to say, Leigh, part of what makes me so excited about all of this is that now I have young girls in my life. Like I have friends who have girls, and I'm just gonna be emotional this entire time. And my niece, and there's such great books for girls.
Thank you.
Like your writing is so feminist. Like, yes.
Bless you. Thank you. I've actually been called a bad feminist many times.
Really?
So, what? I appreciate that.
Yeah. Help me understand that, because I don't understand that.
Well,
or tell me, or help us know, like, this is you're writing, you just said I'm writing for children, but to me, I read this and I'm like, I'm so glad that this book exists for the girls in my life to read.
I want to make something really clear, which is that I feel like there's a whole generation of women authors that has sort of been forgotten suddenly in this wave of like YA books. And I feel like I'm sort of standing on the shoulders of giants. So like Tamora Pierce, Robin Hobb, I don't think anybody's forgotten Octavia Butler, but like these writers who have been creating incredible women characters for a very long time. And it is sometimes distressing to me to see people talk about like, oh my God, strong heroine. And I'm like there have been people who have been trying to get these stories out there for a very long time. And I would say too, like, I feel like my writing has also gotten better. Like it is sometimes uncomfortable for me to talk about, things I wish I'd done differently in the books. And one of the great things about the show has been the ability to do things better than I did them in the first Shadow and Bone, to make it a more diverse cast, to write more authentically about the experiences of these characters. So, for me, my big goal in populating these books with a lot of women and I hope a lot of different men as well. And I don't want to get into spoilers, but like broadening some of the ideas about gender in the Grishaverse, for me has been about showing that there isn't one kind of female badass. Like, it's very tiresome to me to see only what it's like. She's tough as nails and she had a lot of brothers and she can kick your ass. And like, it's like, that's great. That's fantastic. But there's a lot of different kinds of strength, and there's a lot of different kinds of strength for men too. Like you do not actually have to be Jason Bourne to be a badass. You can be like David and be a genius who wants to create beautiful things. You can be wise and witty and kind and not just a brooding dickhead. Like there's a lot of different ways to be a love interest and to not have a love interest at all, to be, Tolia is one of my favorite characters because, first of all, because I always picture him as the Rock, but also because he recites poetry and he has deep faith, and he's somebody who would have been a scholar before he became a knight if he had been born into a different time. So, I don't know, for me, it's about presenting the idea of being a warrior and of being strong as something other than just being able to kick ass.
I mean, I think that's one of the beauty of the books and what's really important, because I feel like in the 90s and when we got like Xena and Buffy and stuff like that, which I loved and watched, the idea, as you said, was just like, oh, a strong female character means she's really like, she's physically strong and she can kick butt.
But
like,
we also had Gabrielle.
That's true.
And we also had Willow, I feel like those, you sort of have to have some of the stereotypical tropes before you can move into sort of a broader depiction of those things. And I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I warned you, I'm loopy from press, so you go ahead.
Okay. Well, you also mentioned men and gender and diversity and taking ideas that you had, expanding them for the show, improving on them, as you said. So that's like another thing that's really great about the books, is the diversity. Like, you have a world populated with people of color. Ravka itself is multicultural, but then you have all these other countries, the Zemeni, Novi Zem, the Shuhan, Firda, Kerch and Ketterdam is like a very metropolitan city. So, I mean, for our guests, why was it so important to you to have diversity of, race, color, and also sexual diversity? You have gay characters, bisexual characters.
I mean,
can you say more about that?
I feel like fantasy and magic and romance and adventure should not belong to one kind of person, and unfortunately, in a lot of culture, we just see that these adventures belong to straight, able-bodied white guys. And I don't want to be a part of that. I want my books to be a place of inclusion. I do not have any illusions about the fact that I know I've made mistakes in the journey towards trying to be inclusive. And I think also, there's something to be said for the fact that only recently in publishing are we moving towards actually having diversity in publishing houses and in the bestseller lists and in the kind of books that not only get published, but get supported by publishers and pushed to the forefront. So my goal is to just make sure that my world welcomes everybody to it. And I think that in the last year and a half, we've seen some very painful statements from certain authors and creators that have not felt particularly inclusive. And I've seen the fallout from that in my readers and in their heartbreak. And I just don't want to be a part of that. Like, I don't ever want people to come to the Grishaverse and feel like they're not welcome there.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, people have been talking a lot about Alina in the show being of mixed race. Now, here's the thing, like when you first gave me this back in the day, one of the first things that you said to me, well, two things. You said that, and it's in the first book itself, that the Grisha and Ravka, because many are refugees from Firda and the Shuhan, are of various races. And then the other thing is the border, as to quote the musical Chess, the borders keep switching around. Yeah. So, there's villages that were part of Firda that are part of Ravka that switch. And by book 3, we learn that spoiler alert, we learn that where Mal and Alina are from, the village that they're from, is on the border of Shuhan. And sometimes it's been part of Shuhan and sometimes it's been part of Ravka. And when we see the village, it is literally half Ravkan, half Shuhan, half Shu, because there's signs that are in both languages. They have the prayer bells that, they have, and the people there are half Shu. So I feel that the show is not doing something that is contradicting the books. It's just expanding something that you laid the seed for in the book. And now you have a wider palette and a wider field to draw from, to expand on, to grow that seed.
Thank you for noticing that. That's actually,
I'm a huge book. Kathleen and I are huge book nerds.
That's how this came about.
Look, in my first meeting with Eric Heiser, that was when we talked about adding diversity to the show. And I find it very strange because people talk about diversity as this kind of artificial construct, when in fact, the world is actually quite diverse. And if your world is just straight and white, maybe move. But like, it's not, this isn't some construct we're putting on. It is actually the way that you tell stories better. But one of the things we talked about was exactly that Alina was from a border town, and borders are porous. Even if the border doesn't move, borders are porous. People who live in border towns, they do business with each other. They fall in love across borders. They form partnerships. And so it made perfect sense to do this. And something that drove me nuts was when we announced that we were casting Alina as half Asian, there were people who were like, why don't you want her to look Russian? And I was like, do you have a map? Like, do you have a map? Because Russia and China share a border. And the idea that there's this homogeneous way that populations work is, to me, just a bizarre way of thinking about story and about life in general. Also, I saw a lot of Hannah love in the chat, and I don't want to give spoilers for the book, but that means the world to me. I worked with some incredible authenticity readers on that story, and thank you. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, I noticed that, but I was like, oh, we can't get into Rule of Wolves. And
we cannot get into it. Also, I didn't realize how hard it is to say Rule of Wolves until, like, it's like the rural juror. Like, it's like, until I was doing press, I was like, Rule of Wolves is...
that's literally something I said to Kathleen in the many times we've discussed the books, was that, like, a border is a line on the map. It doesn't mean that you have, like, Rovkin, and then there's a line and it stops, and then everyone on the other side of the line is Shuhan, you know?
Yeah, as much as some people think that as much as some people would like a wall to just be represented by that line, that's usually not how it works in countries, particularly countries that are at war and conflict. So
yes, I'm glad I noticed, and I totally acknowledge you for planting that seed. You know, and when I was reading it, it wasn't like, oh, this is a new thing. But so you mentioned that you noticed the chat, stuff like that. There are a lot of questions in the chat.
Okay.
So why don't we, Kathleen, why don't we look at, there must be some
absolutely.
questions.
First, two things I want to say. One, Aman, well done on getting in the musical reference. Well done on that one. Chef's kiss, my friend. Two, apologies for the Song of New York, all of the horns behind me.
This was my second musical theater reference, the first being Anatevka. So.
That's,
crumble down,
behind.
work a day.
All right, so we're talking about all of how you built the world and all these different things. So we have a question from Haley, who says, Grishaverse has such a rich world building. Can you tell us more about your inspiration and development process?
So the research part is usually one of my favorite parts of writing, because I love history and I love culture. That's not always true. I do not care about military history, which made writing Rule of Wolves fairly hellish, because I had to really get into military tactics and recent military developments in terms of building out Fjerda's forces. But when it comes to cultural history, I love it. My family is Russian and Lithuanian, and so it felt like a point of access for me. And also, when I was writing Ninth House, the other half of my family is Sephardic, and so, but I'm very disconnected from that half. And so to then be able to feel like I was engaging with that is like a way of keeping my passion for the book alive. The one thing I will say, if there are writers in the chat, is that research can also be very dangerous. It's a great place to get lost and keep you away from the draft. So I usually allot, or when I was writing Shadow and Bone, I allotted 2 or 3 months when I was just really digging into cultural histories, trying to pick up used prayer hymnals, old recipe books, old coffee table books are just a fantastic resource that you can get at used bookstores, to really get a sense of the visual, but also reading Orlando Figes and Yvette's on folklore, and not just understanding sort of like a place on the map or the Pinterest board of that place, but understanding really the cultural history, the folklore of a place, the religion of a place. That said, for me, Russia of the early 1800s was really a jumping off point. And when it came to building Ketterdam and the Kirch, a lot of people, obviously, because Ketterdam, Amsterdam, they see the influence of the Dutch Republic. And for me, it was specifically the Dutch Republic of the 1700s. And you see that really in the merchant class, because I actually changed one of the statistics, because these Dutch trading companies would actually, 1 out of every 3 of their ships would not return to port. That was, the cost of human life was just not something that was cared about. I changed that to 1 in 5 for Ketterdam because it seemed so over the top. But you can also see, if you look closely, the influence of London, New Amsterdam, New York, Venice, Las Vegas. And I think as I've sort of gotten more confident as a writer, I've been more willing to pull from different places to build and fashion my own lands.
And so to build on that, so we have a question from Emma about your timeline research for the transition from the books to the films.
Oh, in terms of like how we twisted the timeline, or am I misunderstanding?
Did you what was your timeline research for the transition from the books to the film? Did you get to cut, did anything get cut you wanted to keep?
Oh,
So thinking of your research and what stayed and what didn't.
No, nothing really I didn't really approach the adaptation that way. You know, I knew when Eric wanted to bring together Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows, I thought it was a swimming idea. I thought it was a great idea. But the mechanism by which we decided to do that was a little bit more challenging. And then finessing the prequel stories for these crows, who's, you know, so that these stories could go on a collision course, making sure that they stayed true to the characters, but that the characters are not the same as when you meet them in Six of Crows. It's earlier. Yeah. And so there's an evolution that they're on. And so you see they're the same characters, but there are certain vulnerabilities and certain things that they haven't quite finessed to become the epic badasses that they become in Six of Crows.
Well, so speaking of which, so Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, they do already contain a lot of backstory, a lot of flashbacks, which is actually one of my favorite parts, because I'll get to a thing, I'm like, tell me more backstory on young Kaz Brecker, you know?
Wow, you wanted more of that? Because that is some dark shit, my friend.
That is dark, yeah. No, but but all of them, like whenever, like there was the plot, and then whenever I'm like, oh, we're gonna get a little more. But so what I've heard, and what we've all heard from the trailer and from the showrunner, is that the Shadow and Bone series will contain, it's like a prequel to the Six of Crows characters. So will it contain some of the stuff that we read about in the book? Or is it
a little bit?
Uh-huh.
I don't know how specific to get here. You will see, especially in terms of Inej and Nina and Matthias, a lot of the material is recognizable.
Yeah.
Some of the other things, the flashbacks, we have held back with the hope, you know, crossed fingers, prayer circles, please take to the internet and start a petition that we'll get a second season. So you won't see all of that because there's already a lot of dense plot that's happening in the story. But what you will get is some of the lines and interactions that you see in Six of Crows. And there will be no part of you, I don't think, if you are a fan of these books, that will be like, I don't recognize that character, or that character would never do that. And I think that comes out of Eric and the writer's room being genuinely fans of the material, and I think respectful of the readers of the material, because sometimes with YA you don't see that. People approach YA adaptation thinking it's broken, it needs to be fixed. They have contempt for the women who write YA, they have contempt for the people who read YA. I never felt disrespected in this process.
We have a couple of Ninth House questions. There are two. They're not related, but I'll ask them both because I love this. Please do. One of them. One is from Aaron Ship. He says, can you, Aaron Ship, who we know from Yale, he's on the board of governors. So Aaron asks, can you share with us how the idea for Ninth House came about? And Aishwarya Pillai asks, who's your favorite character that you've written, and why is it Darlington?
I like your style. Okay, so Ninth House has been a long time in the making. I honestly think the first inkling I had of it when I was a freshman, we didn't have the post office on campus. Do you remember this? Like, they were rebuilding the post office. We sent letters in the olden times, and there was we had to go off campus to the New Haven post office, and I had gone to get a letter, And I was reading it on the walk back, and all of a sudden I looked up, and on my left was this massive mausoleum crawling with wrought iron snakes. And on my right was this cemetery with a Neo-Egyptian gate that said, "The dead shall be raised." And young Goth Leigh was like, "Oh, this is the greatest." Like, I came from Los Angeles. I lived in the Valley. Like, everything was new and tacky and straw hat pizza. And all of a sudden, I was like, how have I come to this enchanted land? And I later found out that that building was Book and Snake. And I became sort of obsessed with these strange bits of architecture that live on our campus and that are so conspicuous, but that are also like, but we're secret. I want you to look, but don't look too close. You know, like, that's the whole, like, closer, stay away, closer, you know, like, envious, but don't, no. So that was definitely a driving force. And I knew for a long time I wanted to write this story that was set among the secret societies at Yale. But in my head, I had sort of, and this is true for all of my books, I have a very like popcorn sensibility, you know, like I am sort of like that. I don't want to say Michael Bay because it's so bad, but like, you know, this kind of like, I love popcorn movies. I love action movies. And so when I was envisioning Six of Crows, I was like, oh, this will be so fun. I'm going to write a fantasy heist. It'll be a romp. And then all of a sudden, you know, Kaz Brekker is riding his brother's bloated corpse to freedom. So, you know, I start out in one place, but I end up in another. And that happened with Ninth House as well, because when I really started excavating my experiences at Yale and what that institution means, it meant that in order to tell the story honestly, I was going to have to go some very different places. And that was true for Six of Crows too. You cannot tell a story about thugs and thieves without being conscious of the forces, the cultural forces, the social forces, the economic forces that created those thugs and thieves. So yeah, that was a very long answer.
I'm going to bring this up because, you know, you mentioned being a freshman at Yale. So this was very popular in the Matt Shackman chat. I'm going to share some pictures.
That'd be so bad.
I promise you, you'll love them. So Margot Ebling.
Live on. That's all I want to say.
Here's the thing. I know somewhere I have pictures of you and me from Fiddler on the Roof from high school, and you're dressed like a pure innocent Russian peasant, and it's the best thing ever. And if we do another chat, like after the show or for Ninth House, I will do my darndest to find that picture because it's the cutest thing. Thank
you.
Well, I think it's cute, but anyway, so Rasmus Johansson and Margot Ebling sent in these, they found these pictures. Let me share my screen here.
I think I'm about to have an out-of-body experience.
Can you see? So this is from the rehearsal. There you see me in my pink frock coat, which I loved, and Margot Ebling. But here we have the dame herself.
Okay.
Leigh Bardugo in all her glory. How great is this?
I need to remind you that we could not afford a second corset for this show. And so I'm literally in a Victoria's Secret miracle bra and duct tape that has been duct taped to give me some cleavage. And I will also remind you that I played your lover. And I believe at one point they made you grab my boob. And I was like, ah!
Oh, Lord, I just went up an octave. But yes, fond memory.
Wow. Well, bless you. The many strange things I did at Yale, that is the least incriminating. So thank you.
Yes. I'll give the audience a minute more to enjoy it, or a second more to enjoy it. But there she is, ladies and gentlemen.
So much.
And everyone in between.
A dork.
So
okay.
That sort of leads us right into the origin story of Leigh Bardugo.
Oh God.
So let's talk about how that goth freshman girl between Book and Snake and the cemetery, what was the journey from that to where we are now with Shadow and Bone on Netflix on the horizon, worldwide bestsellers?
I mean, look, there's a lot of time in there. I am 46 now. Look, I wanted to be a writer from the time I was a kid. I'm one of those kids who looked great on paper, right? I went to Yale. I was a good writer, got pretty good grades. The problem was that I had no idea how to live or how to write a book. Like, I was from a family, like my programming was all about getting into a good college. Like, it was like prep school, testing, the whole, like that was the goal. And so how to exist in the world and how to fail at shit, like how to be bad at things was not, you didn't do things you were bad at in my household. Why would you do that? You could embarrass yourself. And what I didn't realize was that to live in the world and be successful in the world, you have to be bad at things. Like, you have to. And the entire process of writing the first draft of a novel is being bad at it. It's living with the discomfort of writing something that you know is not good, because first drafts are awful, but you end up comparing them to all the books you love without understanding that that is not a first draft or a second draft or a third draft on the shelf. And so when I would try to write, first of all, I had no idea how to write a book. I didn't know that I didn't know how to outline. I didn't know that I was that kind of writer. But that aside, when I would try to write, when things would get bad or I would get stuck, I'd think, I'm just bad at this. I'm bad at this. The story isn't good enough. The idea isn't good enough. And what I've learned is that we don't teach people that those days, those bad days, those difficult days are actually the signpost that you're doing something right. Like, you're trying to do something bigger and more difficult than you've ever done before. Of course, it's going to feel like crap. There will be days when you feel like a genius. They're awesome. But there will be plenty of days when you're doing a job you feel you're bad at. And for me, becoming a writer was all about that journey, and was all about learning to fail, to sit with the discomfort of not being good enough, and to keep going nonetheless. So that's like the emotional side of this equation. The rest of it is I had a lot of crappy jobs, man. So many crappy jobs. And I slept on Michelle Chihara's couch for a solid 6 months and broke up her relationship. But he was a jerk, and you're welcome, Michelle.
Nikki Brown in the chat is asking, when writing, do you just write whatever comes to mind and tweak here and there, or do you try to follow a flow to your writing? You kind of touched upon that a little bit with outlining.
I write with an outline. My first steps in writing a book are to first be able to tell the story in a short paragraph. And then I write what in Hollywood is called a beat sheet, which is 12 distinct sort of arcs that happen in the book. So when I'm done, I have on one page, I have an entire book. It's just a very short book that isn't particularly satisfying to read. And then my process is to go back and start adding in everything that I know, breaking it into scenes, adding dialogue, until I have this very, very messy, what I call the zero draft that nobody will ever see. And to give you an idea, the zero draft for Six of Crows was 30,000 words, and the final draft of Six of Crows was 130,000 words. So it's not really a draft. It's just a very messy outline. Again, it's a book. It's just not a good book. I leave lots of spaces. When I say that I outline, I know the major moments that happen, the events that are pushing me into the next part of the book, but I don't know a lot about the characters. For instance, I had no idea what Kaz's backstory was until I started writing it. And that's part of what keeps the book alive for me, so that I don't feel like I'm just transcribing something. I feel like I still have the process of discovery and excitement as I work. I do want to say that's my process, but everybody's process is different. And I think one of the challenges of being a creative person is figuring that out. And I think that's something Aman and Kathleen can speak to as well, because there's no clear path for you when you're trying to work in a creative field. Nobody lays that out for you. And even if they did, it probably wouldn't work, because you have to find the thing that allows you to create and generate exciting work.
Yeah, it has to come from you, and you have to stay. I mean, we started by talking about the 80 bajillion different things that you are doing, and how do you stay motivated for all of that? If it's because you have us, your fans, but it also has to be for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The process of writing a novel is so long. It takes so long. You have to be in love, and you will fall out of love. Trust me, you will fall out of love and you will fall in love with something else. You'll be like, you know, the new idea approaches and you're like, who are you? Where did you come from? I bet people would like to read you more than what I'm working on right now. But you have to stay in love with that idea. Remind yourself of what it was that made you excited about it and made you want to engage with it in the first place. And then you have to wait for the moment you fall back in love. And that's always a different point in the process for me. Like, sometimes it's in the first revision, sometimes it's not until the book's been published. So, and sometimes it never comes. Sometimes you're like, it's all garbage. You were garbage.
Wow.
But never have the affair with the other idea.
I have a trick for that.
Yeah.
Oh.
It doesn't work with people. It only works with books. But if you get lured by another idea, if you're getting haunted by another idea that's trying to pull you away, one thing you can do is ask yourself, what is exciting about that? What is appealing to you? What's the juice that's drawing you over there? And then put it into your project, because what might be happening is your subconscious is signaling you and telling you you're missing something from the project that you're on. But that doesn't work with people. You can't be like, could you be hotter? Because then I'd be more into you. That doesn't go over well.
I don't know. I mean, Aman keeps getting hotter. I don't know about anybody else, but right. But I think you kind of, so we had a question from Neve, who works with teen writers who love your books as much as she does. And if you had one piece of advice for young writers, particularly where they have trouble finishing a saga of a story, what would it be? And it sounds like this is one thing. What else would you say to them, though?
I mean, look, the greatest gift you can give yourself as a writer is to finish a draft of something, to see the beginning and middle and end on the page. There are a few different strategies if you get stuck. One is switch POVs. Another is go for a walk and talk to yourself. I do that frequently. I try to put my little AirPods in now so that the neighbors don't think I'm even more eccentric than I am. But also, I
remember you got very excited with Bluetooth when Bluetooth first came out.
Oh yes, I did. I did indeed. Although it only works so well. I used to keep a bag of broccoli by my desk when I was working, like healthy snacking. And then I came home from a walk and realized I had broccoli in my hair the whole time. And I had like multiple conversations with people. And I was like, well, you're not going to break into my house because you know I'm nuts. But I think that the process, the thing that usually keeps you from finishing something is, I think, often a critical voice. So if your writers, your young writers are being beset by that voice of doubt, they need to remind themselves that it's going to be bad. The first draft is going to be bad, and that they should let it be. That the job of the first draft is to give you a sense of the story. You're telling the story to yourself, and that it is perfectly acceptable to have starts and stops and placeholders, as long as you can get to the end. Then you can go back and fill in all of the things you weren't sure of. But that is, it is a tough process. And I would say too, when you're young, the real chore is just to continue enjoying writing. Like, there's no expiration date on your talent. I think when you go to a school like Yale, when you have been in this sort of prep school mode, on the one hand, it's a tremendous blessing to have people who care about and are invested in your education. On the other hand, what it teaches you is that you are valuable because you are young and brilliant, okay? Eventually you stop being the youngest person in the room, okay? You're not a wunderkind anymore. What's interesting about you is not that you're young. And if you have a story to tell, it doesn't matter if you tell it when you're 25 or 35 or 45 or 55.
Wow.
Yeah. I want to start writing right now, Leigh.
And you just have to put me in your acknowledgements.
You just keep chatting. I'll be over here.
Oh, speaking of acknowledgements, I would like to, for the people at home, there's a character named after me in Wonder Woman Warbringer, and it brings me so much joy whenever I see my name in the book. I'm just going to say that.
You were one of the people who helped me figure out how to crack that story. We were in a car on the way to Comic-Con when I was like, oh, I know what I'm going to do. So yeah, you definitely deserved that character naming.
Thank you very much.
So I think that, so one conversation that Aman and I have when we nerd out about your writing is, who are you in the books? So Genya is my guess, like clearly Genya.
Is it Genya or Genya? Because I've heard you pronounce it Genya, and someone asked in the comments.
It's Jenya.
Oh,
Genya. That's what I thought.
I'm not even pronouncing it correctly.
I don't care. I don't care about any of the pronunciations except Grisha. That's the only one that I'll be like, no. Everything else, no. Do your thing.
Yeah, it's my accent. It's the accent.
It's funny because we were team Jenya and team Genya. Okay, I won.
All right, so Aman, okay, you won that one, Aman. Now tell the people who you think Leigh is in the books.
So you're thinking she's Jenya, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's the thing. I'm not saying you're this character because I feel that as a writer and as someone who knows you, there's a little bit of you in all the characters and a lot of the characters, right? But I gotta say, when I started after Shadow and Bone, when I got to Siege and Storm, and I don't want to, I mean, it's a mild spoiler, but when I was reading, okay, the character that I was like, God, this character is so Leigh was Nikolai. Yes.
Oh my God! You could not pay me a higher compliment.
And it's not just because you're both blonde, but like.
And royalty.
Well, it's because there's several things. Because he's like he's like super creative, and he's like an inventor. You know, he like has ideas where he's like, what if I take this and combine it with this and make the hummingbird and things like that. So
and the sense of humor.
And also, and I'm going to share another picture. Also, he throws a great party. And wait, wrong page. He throws a great party. Let me make sure I can share this correctly. He shows a great party.
Were these photos approved?
No. I've seen it.
And here we are at your birthday party, and look at you. Amazing.
I do look good there. I look good in a pair of horns. What can I tell you?
You look so good. This is how this woman throws a party. Like,
I love a theme. This was the brunch macabre, which I enjoyed throwing. I am a big What We Do in the Shadows fan. So yes, I do love to throw a party. And I do think Nikolai's sense of humor is very similar to mine, but Nikolai is actually very challenging to write. He's wittier than I am. He understands science, which I do not. So I appreciate that. It's an incredibly generous thing to say. And I also would say Nikolai is an optimist. Like, and I'm not. I'm one of those people who I call it disaster origami. Like something good will happen and I'm like, well, wait, how can I make it terrible? And that's how I live my life. Whereas Nikolai is the opposite. He's just like, I can fix that. I can conquer that. I can put my mind to it. It's going to be all right. Like even in the darkest hour, Nikolai is like, I can conquer this, and actually that's part of why I love writing him, because that's certainly like the face he presents to the world, but there's also a cost to being everybody's optimist. But that is really, really kind of you. Thank you.
All right. Well, so what's your answer? Is there one character or multiple characters that you sort of see yourself in? See in yourself, either way.
I mean, I think there's a lot of me in everyone. I think that Nina and Kaz might be the closest. Kaz because I'm a jerk. No, Kaz because he shares some of my physicality, but also he's a planner, which I am too. And because I hold a grudge like a MFer. But also, Nina is like me on my best day. I am a fat lady who loves life and does not shy away from a fight unless it's on Twitter, in which case don't at me. But like, I think there's a lot of, I think Nina's who I wish I was. Do you know what I mean?
The chat consensus seems to be Nina. That everybody was reading was like, oh, Nina is Leigh.
I mean, but
so.
I wish, like Nina has this. Nina is in Rule of Wolves. Nina is undercover, like in the greatest danger she could possibly be in. Like everything is dire. She's trying to keep her nation from war, but she's still having a good time, and I really respect that.
Nice. So I don't know. I mean, I see Nina was my second guess after Jenya.
And look, there's a lot of me in Jenya too. I used to be a makeup artist. Like, I think that, you know, I've spoken before that I am a survivor of sexual assault. Like, I like to write women. I like to write women who get their revenge.
Which is part of why we love you. Part of why we love you.
Well,
so Kathleen, sorry, go ahead.
Actually, one thing, I want to bring something back to Kathleen at the beginning, briefly mentioned and had been talking to me about, was, you know, Inej and human trafficking and sex trafficking and all of that. Kathleen, did you have more that you wanted to add?
This is one of the things that I love about this character, and I love that at the end of the book you talk about where to reach out about the sex trafficking, but it's something that needs to be brought into the conversation in the world, I feel. And what you've done so brilliantly is you've woven it into this story so it becomes part of our consciousness without going like, hey, you need to think about this is awful. And so yeah, I would love to hear you talk more about that.
Look, I don't set out to write stories where I have a message, you know, like where I'm going to teach you a lesson, I'm going to give you a lecture.
Yeah.
I set out to tell stories honestly. Ketterdam is a place that treats people as commodities. It is a place where the Protestant work ethic has been taken to its, you know, where prosperity doctrine has been taken to its ultimate conclusion. And if you view people as expendable and commodities, then invariably people like Kaz and Inej are going to have the experiences that they've had. And I wanted to tread very carefully there. I think that, you know, there's a lot of bad stuff that happens in fantasy, and it is easy to kind of engage in a kind of misery tourism. And, you know, whenever I approach a subject like this, that is where the research I think is most deep, because I want to approach with respect and with caution, you know, and also one of the things I try to do is, you know, when you're doing a tour or you're doing, you know, promotion, it's very easy to just be talking about me. So, you know, I've tried to make sure that whenever I'm publishing something new, that I'm donating from my pocket, not from my publisher's pocket, to causes that I care about, and particularly people who have helped me in that process. So when when Six of Crows was published, you know, I donated 10% of my first week sales to to GEMS, which is the Girls Education and Mentoring Services, which is based in New York and helps girls who have been trafficked. And it's a subject that I think people have a lot of misconceptions about. And I think that it's important to, I guess, just address them with nuance and with generosity for experience. But that's, again, I always feel like I will invariably get things wrong or do things wrong, but I also care very deeply about these stories, particularly when it's the stories of women, and I don't want to shy away from them just because they're a little bit daunting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that the way that you're doing this changes the conversation. It brings it to the fore without pushing us there. It changes the way we think about it. And, you know, I believe to the core of my being that we change the stories, we change the world. And I think you're doing that.
Thank you.
I think with Inej, I mean, I totally agree with Kathleen. And I think with Inej and with Kaz, we start off in more of like the fantasy trope that we're used to, right? That, you know, like he's a thief with, you know, and she has this background, and you say what their background is, and we sort of put our little fantasy trope glasses on. We're like, oh yeah, that type of character. And then you like get into it. And you know, when I was first reading Six of Crows before I got to Crooked Kingdom, I was like, is she really going to say what happened, like, to Inej? Like, is she really going to? And then you get to Crooked Kingdom and you get it. Like, you start to get the details and stuff like that. And then you've created these two characters. You know, I don't want to spoil too much for Crooked Kingdom, but it's, you know, they can't touch each other, and that's like all they want to do. And there's some scenes that are just so heartrending, you know, beautiful and iconic, and you just feel for them so much because you're just like, I just want them to be able to touch each other, you know?
I mean, look, I can honestly say that writing Inej's backstory, writing Kaz's backstory, writing Alex's backstory, they're some of the most harrowing experiences I've had as a writer, because you are digging into this sort of deep place of memory and sadness, and trying to bring these characters to life in a whole way. But on a lighter note, I did today do an interview, and one of the people who has seen the show said, "Why is there not more kissing?" And I was like, "Have you read my books? Nobody gets nothing." Like, I like the slow burn. I want you to be screaming for it. I want you to be like, yes. Like, I love the slow burn so much. So I was like, that was me putting the brakes on the show constantly, just being like, nah. I don't like to give people what they want until they really want it.
Oh God, I really wanted it. I was like, you know, from the balcony, from the windowsill and the sunlight and everything, I wanted it then, and then I had to wait, like, you know.
But it's also, look, I can tell you too that, so there's a scene in Crooked Kingdom, I've talked about it before. It is probably the hardest scene I've ever written, like the toughest scene. And it's the scene where Kaz helps Inej with her bandages. And the reason that scene exists is because Holly Black and Sarah Reese Brennan were like, give me more romance or I'll murder you in your sleep. And I was like, okay, I will give you more romance. But I wanted to be very respectful of what these two people had been through and this cautious approach. And I think I wrote, I don't know how many versions of that scene, finessing and tweaking and fine tuning. It was just incredibly important to me. And you can't, you know, it's all fun to talk about ships and stuff, but like, I don't want trauma to be something that gets healed. Like, oh good, you know, you fell in love, great, go make out. Like, it would be such a violation of people who actually do experience trauma. Like, if I read that in a book, I'd be pissed. So for me, like, the journey towards healing is often a slow one. And it's one with a lot of like, you backslide. Like, it's not like, oh, okay, I'm good, I'm cool.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
And so we have a question from an anonymous attendee that in a way builds on that for me. Has the process of production for the show changed your writing process at all? Because you talked before about being able to amend some things that you're like, oh, if I could.
It hasn't really changed my process, but I will say that, especially when in thinking about the pilot for Ninth House, it has made me a little less terrified of diving into a story, because I really have just started saying, okay, just play it out in your head, you know, like just, it is the problem with all of your dreams coming true, which really mine have, because this is the job I wanted my entire life. And thanks to my extremely wonderful readers, I get to do it. The problem is that it becomes your business. And so it saps some of the joy and the freedom out of that, because you're on deadlines and because there are expectations. And because, I mean, when I wrote Crooked Kingdom, it was one of the most difficult experiences of my life, because there was so little time to write that book. And I was so burned out. Wow. And honestly, when I published it, there was a part of me that was like, is this terrible? Like, I have no idea. And it wasn't until months later that I was like, okay, maybe I did right by these characters and did a good enough job. But I also think that desire to make it better, to get better at your craft, to keep driving forward, to write better prose, to write more authentically. Like, if you don't have that deep critic, you stay static and you tell the same story again and again. And I believe that readers pick up on that. And, you know, we have a contract that, you know, you've made it possible for me to write these books. So it's my job to get better as a writer and try to deliver stories that will satisfy. That doesn't always mean you're going to get what you want. Often you won't. People will die. It will make you sad. But I will try to do it in a way that you'll cry, but you'll be happy about it.
Well, there's a lot of love for Crooked Kingdom in the chat right now, Leigh. A lot of love. So you did right by everybody, my dear.
It was really bloody hard to write. Really, really. I was not happy as I was crying. I'm sorry.
And I can relate to you. I have to say, like, what you said about like when you do something you love and that's your profession. There are so many times, because I'm an artist and I work in entertainment and advertising and I have deadlines, but on the flip side is like, I really like to draw. So that is actually what I do for fun and relaxes me as well. And there's so many times when I'm just like, I have this deadline and I'm so stressed, but if I draw, it will make me less stressed. So I should just lean into just enjoy the process right now. But then there's this deadline and my agent and,
I mean,
but I'm not complaining. It's a great place to be in. It's the best.
Look, you can be grateful for where you are and also acknowledge that every step in this process has new challenges. Like,
yeah. And you're so prolific. Like you're so prolific. You've written, I feel like you've written like a book a year almost. Like,
yeah, but in YA, that is standard. Like, like YA is, there is a very intense pressure to deliver a book a year. With Crooked King, with Six of Crows and with Six of Crows, there was an 18-month gap. And with King of Scars, there was a 2-year gap, which felt terrifying, but there was no way for me to bring Ninth House out. And so yes, I've done a book a year, but but Ninth House 2 is going to be late. So yeah.
Chandler Poling, oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Chandler Poling has an interesting question that no one else has asked. Could you see your stories adapting into a video game, and would you play said game?
I don't know how to play games. I don't even know how to play Animal Crossing. There's one game on my phone and it's called I Love Hue, and it's literally matching colors. Very soothing. There's just soft chimes.
I played that game too. I had that on my phone. I love that game.
But I feel like a video game would be absolutely incredible, but I don't, I think that's kind of up to Netflix at this point. Like, I don't think I actually get to make that call, but I think it would be incredible. And we could use Joe Trapanese's score and it would be amazing.
And I mean, I could totally picture like Inej, going from roof
you choose your skill set. Like there was a librarian who created a D&D game based around Six of Crows, and I just thought it was the most awesome thing. I think it's that some of these stories really lend themselves to that, and I certainly don't have the skill to do it, so I'm pretty hyped when people do.
Sophie Kane asks, what part of the show are you most excited for book fans to see?
I mean, if you guys have watched the trailer, I think you've gotten an inkling of the way these stories are going to come into conflict, but there are a lot of surprises coming. Wow, that is a tough question. For me, okay, my favorite episode is episode 7. It's the second to last episode. I haven't actually watched it with all of its special effects. I haven't watched any of the episodes with all of their special effects and the music. I wanted to wait, I had watched the edits and all of that, but I wanted to sort of wait to see it with everybody else. But I love that episode. And even with all the placeholders that are VFX to come, I was so emotional watching that one. I thought it was incredible. Also, there's a really great little Easter egg that I love where one of the characters throws a book and another one of the characters, and that book is the Rovkin edition of Shadow and Bone, the only one that exists in the world. It has, and I have it on my bookshelf and I get up and show you, but I'm actually legitimately not wearing pants. So I'm not going to do that, but I do have it, and it is my most cherished possession. So yeah, forget my family photographs. That's what I'm running out of a burning house with.
That's great.
So we have speaking of the show, we have another question from another anonymous attendee. We'll keep your name quiet. Why is
Ben Barnes? It's you.
Why is Shadow and Bone rated TV MA? I don't want to put you in a spoiler's bind. Okay, keep going.
This is not a spoiler. I genuinely don't know. I don't know. It is fairly violent, although it's not like Game of Thrones violent. It's fairly violent. There's some very scary monsters and stuff, but as far as I know, we don't see any boobs. We don't see any butt. I was surprised to see that rating. I'm very confused by it. In fact, I should send an email and ask about it because unless they added something I don't know about, which would be exciting. I have no idea why that would be. There's not a lot of swearing that I can recall. It's actually, like, I don't want to say it's family entertainment because it is pretty brutal in spots. The dude gets cut in half. But it's not like The Witcher when suddenly there's just boobs everywhere while people like have a discussion. It's not like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just not that kind of show.
Interesting.
And because TVMA is the equivalent of an R rating? Or am I?
This is so.
It might be a marketing thing.
I mean, maybe because somebody just suggested the backstory is like maybe because there are brothels mentioned, or
is there language? Maybe it's language. Is there any cursing? Is there any cursing?
There's not a lot of. I mean, maybe I didn't notice the language. Maybe there's more swearing than I realized, but I don't think I think there's been this sort of weird movement in fantasy in both books and in adaptations to be like, look how edgy we're being. Look, we're gonna make this bleak. We're gonna make this as edgy as possible. And that is definitely not the road we went down. I think we really wanted there to be an element of wish fulfillment in this and beauty and the price of that as well. But that's not the show we set out to make. So we weren't like, we're gonna show you HBO how many boobs and swears we can get into this. I sound like I'm 12. Boobs and swears. No, there's no nudity. There is no nudity. I do not know where that's coming from. Again, unless I have not watched the final episodes, but unless they suddenly were like, and now sexy dancing, like I have no idea where they had all the nudity. That would be really, if I was like, Mom, let's watch the show. And suddenly they're like, and now explicit sex.
I mean, it could be a marketing thing. You know what I mean? It could just be like appealing to like
Okay, wait.
Audience.
Wait. Rose says, Wiki says TVMA means programs with this rating. Well, it's fine. Dark humor. Yep. Frequent use of profanity. No. Intense violence. Yes. May include blood and gore. Some. And or strong sexual themes. I think we're low on the sexual themes, but maybe I'm just so wild I don't even notice.
You're like, this is tame compared to my life, baby.
That's right.
They all saw the picture with the horns from your birthday party.
Right? And they're like, she wears the horns well. It's got to be, she throws a wild party. So, but
a wild brunch.
A wild brunch. Because we have to be home and go to bed early, okay? Listen.
I know. I will be in bed. I've gone to sleep at like 9 p.m. the last 2 nights. We have a foster dog, and he wants to go to bed at 9, so we go to bed at 9.
So if whatever the foster dog wants, the foster dog gets.
Yeah.
So, but speaking of shows with blood and gore and things, it just disappeared. Somebody asked about the show's gotten a lot of comparisons to Game of Thrones. How do you feel about that?
I mean, look, you guys know, like that was my fandom. Like the books are my, I love them deeply. I know they're flawed. All books are flawed, but I love them. I was in George R. R. Martin's fan club. I've been knighted by George R. R. Martin. But look, if it weren't for Game of Thrones, we wouldn't be here. Like, I remember watching those billboards go up and being like, if this show isn't successful, there will not be another fantasy adaptation for 10 years because fantasy is expensive and it's a gamble. But it did succeed. And quite honestly, I think it opened audiences' minds to investing in these fantasy worlds and sort of going on a ride that felt different from a lot of other stories. So I feel very grateful for that. I would be thrilled if we had even a fraction of the success, but I do think it's a very different story, very different feeling in the world. And I think the characters have sort of very different stakes than the characters in Game of Thrones.
So I've asked a couple questions.
I have a question since we were talking about Game of Thrones, because you and I watched several episodes of Game of Thrones together at Michelle's parties. So Kathleen and I were discussing, a little bit of the world building and some of the stuff we've discussed before. When I first read Shadow and Bone, because I later on read the Game of Thrones books and whatnot, but when I first read Shadow and Bone, Alina Starkov, the last name Starkov, I thought, Star, because the sun is also a star. So, you know, it's the sun, star.
Which is another wonderful YA book, by the way.
You love how I put these little nuggets in here.
Mm-hmm.
But then later on, as I was reading, I thought Starkov, Lantsov, Starks, Lannisters. Was that intentional?
No. No. Yes.
Right.
Yes, it was an homage. No, I had no idea.
What was the origin of Starkov as a name then?
Starkov was star. You put
I was right. Yeah.
your finger right on it. Yes, Alina Starkov is like, all of the names actually have some history to them and some like little Easter eggs in them. They're not chosen arbitrarily. Occasionally a name I will just love, and so I'll use it. Tamar is an example. Like, I think it means date palm, which is not a very Tamar kind of, you know, meaning, but or Tamar. I pronounce it Tamar because I'm, you know, me. So there's a lot of meaning in a lot of the names, but it was not a reference to the Starks and the Lannisters at all.
Okay, good, because I didn't think it was.
Nice to be a Lannister, although he is blonde.
So trivia question for anyone that wants to answer in the chat. What is Jesper Fahey's middle name? What is? There you go. Joy Webb got it. Llewellyn.
Oh,
Llewellyn.
I was gonna fail that pop quiz.
And you talked about the naming of characters. So Jesper Fahey, when I first started reading about him, I'm like, oh, Morgan Fahey, friend of ours, the formidable Morgan Fahey, who's a fabulous woman.
Mm-hmm.
But then what's great is, as I was reading it, like, his father is Kalish. So I was like, oh, that's why his last name is Fahey. And like, you built that into the character, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic.
Why did I think it was Jesper Cullen Fahey? How dare.
Any other names that, you know, Josh, I'm assuming Fyodor Kamensky was named after Josh Kamensky?
Yes, there's a Kamensky, and I think there might even be a Kamensky's military history in one of the books.
Tomi Kiana, named after Michelle Chihara's daughter.
Yes. Wow, that is a deep pull. Tomi Kiana is named after Tommy.
Hey, I read very deeply.
I love it. These are the things you hope people will pick up on. And there's a Mesley tomb in I think Ruin and Rising when they escape. I don't know. My friends have been really good to me through this whole process. You know, they've read my drafts, they've put up with my tears, they've you know, helped me solve plot problems and given me great ideas. Morgan has sat on the couch with me many times when I'm like, just keep me company, because I didn't leave my house for basically 3 years of writing Six of Crows, Crooked Kingdom, Language of Thorns. Like I had no life at all, and my friends would come by and bring me snacks and sit with me, and it meant the world. So I love putting them in the books.
Well, and Morgan was on that, you know, Wonder Woman car ride with us down to Comic-Con, so I definitely know, you know, her contributions.
I think King of Scars is dedicated to Morgan.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of them. Yeah, King of Scars. It's King
Pretty
of
sure.
Scars.
Yeah.
I love it. I love what
Your question is why you would want to leave the house. Man, after a year of pandemic, I respect your introversion. That is hardcore, and I am into it.
That's commitment.
Yeah.
That is commitment.
I have another trivia question for the chat. If I say, "Mother, father, pay the rent," what do you say? Anyone in the chat? Kathleen?
I failed another pop quiz.
Lauren got it. Lauren got it first. I count my dear.
So my real fantasy is for somebody, like, for the show to get big enough that people do a deep dive, and then at like Comic-Con 2 years from now, it's like everybody in the Comédie Brute like outfits. Like, that would be, I would ascend. That would just be like peak amazing.
And scene.
Laura Maldonado got it first. I can't, my dear, the money's.
I know Laura. She's one of the OG Grisha fans. Like, this is the thing, is that there are people who have been coming to my signings, since there were like 8 people there, like where we would go on first read tour and there'd be more people on the panel than were in the audience, you know? And that's when you were like, and you would have conversations with people in line. You could talk for a really long time because you know, what are you gonna do? Go back to the hotel and have, you know, a room service roast chicken? Like, it was just a very different thing. And I used to be able to hang out on Twitter and we would camp out and do cover drops, and it was different, you know. And there's part of me that I am 100% grateful for where we are. I would not have it any other way, but I do miss that, that kind of communication. It's different now.
Yeah.
Jenny mentioned the signing of the Peabody, where I was like, no one will come. And we had a really nice turnout for that.
How many people did you get at the, because for those who don't know, the Peabody is a natural history museum at Yale.
That was our pop-up signing. Sweetie, do you remember how many people were at the Peabody?
Well over 100.
Well over 100. Okay, that's not bad.
I think it was actually
All right.
close to.
He doesn't sound impressed at all. It was a very nice turnout. I know. That day, that was very special to me to get to do that signing. That was, and also to be able to walk into Atticus, which is a bookshop just off the Yale campus, and see my book on the shelf. And I brought it to the register because I want to ask if they wanted me to sign it. You don't want to just like deface a book and have people be like, no one wants that. But I walked up to the register and she was like, oh, this one's supposed to be really good. And I was like, I wrote it. I think for a moment she was like, okay, sure you did.
Can I see ID, please?
Not really.
There's a couple of questions from Samantha Stonecipher and a third anonymous question about the show. So Samantha Stonecipher says, what was it like being an extra in the show? And also, what was your favorite memory from being on set with the Shadow and Bone cast? And then a parenthesis question from Anonymous is, why was the Darkling's name changed for the show?
Okay, that's a lot of questions, so you're gonna have to remind me of them. I'm gonna start from the last.
What was it like? Okay, well, let's start with the last one, yeah.
Okay, so we needed to change the name because we had too many scenes where people had to talk about him or to him, and it just, it felt incredibly contrived not to have him have a name. So we went through a few names, but they got really attached to Kerrigan. And I thought it would be kind of funny if he had sort of stolen this nobleman's name. It definitely screws with canon, but you need to just make a leap for that one. And I also love it because it sounds like the Kurgan, which is from a movie called Highlander, which you should not watch because it is aged terribly. Really terribly. It is a heartbreak, let me tell you. But if anybody wants me to rewrite that movie, I would do it. Okay.
No, you heard it here first.
Favorite memories from set. Okay, I'm gonna give two. One was Ben. Ben wasn't supposed to be there my first day on set. He wasn't scheduled to shoot, and he actually flew into Budapest and snuck up behind me and said, "Fine, make me your villain." And I nearly jumped out of my chair. It was amazing, and I cried, of course. He is a delight. He also smells amazing. I'm just gonna put that out there. I know.
Wow.
I mean, the man, I don't know what cologne he wears, but A+. Maybe it's just Ben Barnesiness. And then the second time I visited set was at the very end. And they had been shooting for 6 months, and I know how tired they must have been. They'd been away from home and loved ones, but this cast, we were sitting, and the green room was the tent was right next to ours. And in between takes, they would sing together. They would sing and make up songs and sing songs from musicals. And I thought something incredible happened here. Like, I don't know how the show will do. You don't know if something will catch on. But in that moment, I was like, they love each other. And it was just amazing. It was just incredibly moving and made me really happy. And I think speaks to who they are as people, but also sort of like what happened with the writer's room, what happened with the crew, what happened with these actors. Like, it was very special.
Wow, it's amazing.
We had a couple questions too earlier about casting and the casting process. So it sounds like you just nailed that casting. Do you want to talk a little bit about the casting process?
I mean, I was lucky because I didn't have to see sort of the broad wave of auditions. They would just send me sort of, okay, these are our top 10, our top 20, our top 5. And it was really nothing like I expected it to be. I think that I had thought, you know, oh, you have a few favorites and then you have a debate about it and a discussion. And what really happens is you see somebody and you're like, it's that person and I will murder everyone in my path to make sure I get that person. What do I have to do to get that person? You know, like, and it was really genuinely frightening because you want to cast this person, but there's a lot of people who have to watch the tapes and they have other shows they're working on. And sometimes they're like, look, we're really early in the process. Yes, this actor is amazing, but and you're like, what if we lose them? And I would wake up every morning. That happened with Amita and Jesse. We found them really fast. And I was so scared we were going to lose them. And I just am so glad we didn't because they're amazing.
I mean, Amita looks exactly like how I pictured Inej in the books. Like
she looks like Kathleen Wallace fan art. Like when I saw her, when she came into the video, I was like, and then I paused because I was like, what if she's terrible? Like, look, there are plenty of people who look the part and can't act their way out of a paper bag, but then she was incredible. So it worked out very well.
Aman, I hopped in on your question. Were you done, or would you like me to?
Well, the other question
hog the chat.
is what it was like being an extra in the show.
Oh, well, it was exhausting. I didn't understand how hard this job was. Like being an actor is actually genuinely hard. Like I did plays with Aman and Kathleen, but being like a film and TV actor, I didn't understand how grueling that is. And I didn't have lines. I barely had to do anything. It was incredible. I got fitted for a kefta. They let me wear my Crocs because I really can't wear any shoe other than a Croc at this point. They also tucked me. Okay, so when you guys see the scene, I think it's in episode 2 or 3. And the Grisha come down this grand staircase and I was supposed to be with them, but the director knew that I had a disability and they had planned for it. And so they tucked me in a little niche where statues usually go. And I just scrambled out and like joined the group when they reached the bottom of the stairs so I wouldn't have to go up and down the stairs. So I will be forever grateful to them for that. Although I missed my timing on the first take. And so there's just like the Grisha and then this person just crossing over. But it's pretty hard to miss me because all of the other extras are acting and I'm just standing there grinning like a fool. Like there was no acting. I was just like, yay! Like I'm just so goofily grinning. It's quite embarrassing and I don't care because it was such an amazing experience.
There's a great question from Allison Buse, which actually ties into something that I was thinking, because here's what I did. You know, I recently read Ninth House because it's one of your more recent books and there's a whole Yale connection and all that stuff. And so I read Ninth House. And then when the show was announced, both Kathleen and I were like, we got to reread, you know, the Grishaverse, right? So I read Ninth House, and then the next book that I read after Ninth House, or not the next book, but the next of your books that I read after Ninth House was Shadow and Bone. And, you know, there's the difference there. Like, there's a big difference between the two because, you know, Ninth House is adult. It's an adult novel. There's adult stuff in there, and Shadow and Bone is definitely, you know, written for the YA audience, and it's your first book. And now having, you know, read through them, I'm now up to Crooked Kingdom. I'm right near the end of Crooked Kingdom, but I've really seen, you know, the evolution, reading them back to back, of your characters, of your writing. I mean, it's fantastic. It's beautiful. So Allison Buse asked, how different is the process for writing the first book in a series to writing the last? What is the process like for making sure you pick up all the threads you laid out in the beginning?
The first book is easier. First books in series are the most fun because you're throwing open doors and there's no parameters. There's no map. There's no real plan. You can erase anything. You can go backwards. You can do anything that you want. As you move through a series, that gets more and more challenging, which is what I've learned. You know, there have been times when I've been like, damn it, why is there a mountain range there? Oh yeah, I put it there. So there's a very different, there's a different vibe to writing those stories. I will say that writing Rule of Wolves for me was actually a delight, because it was the book I was writing in pandemic, like I submitted the first draft of that, a very rough draft of that I think was only about 80,000 words long. And the finished book is about 100,000 words longer than that. But I submitted that draft to my editor just to give her an idea of where I was going right before lockdown. And it was getting to escape to this place, getting to be with these characters, getting to write them again, and getting to fight battles you could actually win, to create monsters that can be bested as opposed to this invisible thing that was keeping us all in our homes, was really a glorious thing. And I wanted it to be a kind of, it's a farewell for now, but also like a present to my readers. And I know some of them got mad at me. It's okay. But I'm very proud of that book and I loved writing it. And one of the things that's so gratifying to me is a few people have talked to me about the battle scenes and enjoying the battle scenes so much. And I hate writing battle scenes. So I was like, I conquered this. Like, I absolutely hate it. If I could, I would never write a battle scene again. I love writing one-on-one fights or even like a group fight, fine. But once there's armies involved, I'm like, ugh. Like, okay, can't we just do a montage and swords clanging and bullets and a cannon and but unfortunately that is frowned upon in fiction. But yeah, I don't remember where I started this question.
That was great. That was great. Kathleen, did you have something from the?
I have another question from the chat, but I have another question first though. So the montage, all those different things, that's screenwriting. Like, how much screenwriting are you doing?
I mean, I took a screenwriting class because you actually get thrown out of Los Angeles if you don't take one. So I did take a screenwriting class. I'm tempted to name it because it was a total scam, but I'm not going to do that. I don't want to get sued. But I did learn some valuable tools that I used later. But really, like, I think that's language that we all know from like 80s movies. Like, oh, let's put on a show, like montage. Like, but there are definitely moments in a book where I wish I could just, play this music and then we'll cut together these scenes and it'll be
cue jaunty music.
That's exactly right. Somebody mentioned the Kaz and the Jesper fight in the chat, and I love that fight. It's one of my favorite scenes they've ever written, especially because they're so clearly teenage boys. They're like they're just like, there's no skill. They're just taking the piss out of each other. Like, I really love it, and I think it's actually deeply emotional. That's the thing about writing a 2-person fight or 3-person fight is you can keep it so small, and so you can really be deeply in their heads and their hearts. And I think that's what makes fight scenes interesting. Otherwise, it's just choreography. There's a scene where Kaz fights his way down these stairs. And that was another one that took multiple drafts because it was first, what is the physicality of this? And then how do you keep it emotional? Otherwise, it's just punch, kick, gouge.
I love that fight too, because as you said, they're teenage boys. But, then there's also, I mean, it's not in the fight, I don't think, but, when Kaz calls Jesper Geordie and you're just like, oh,
It's pretty brutal. It's honestly, I like that.
Yeah.
I want it to hurt, if I did my job, if it doesn't hurt, I didn't do my job right. And it hurts me when I write it. Like, I want to feel that. And if I don't, why am I doing it? So yeah, like, people are always like, why do you make me cry? And I'm like, because how do you know you've been there if you didn't cry a little, like, it's not just the good stuff. And okay, so I'm going to talk candidly, my friends, with you about a pet peeve.
Okay. That's what
People
we love.
always come at me with, this character didn't deserve this, or this character didn't deserve to die. My life experience has been, the people who deserve to die don't go. Like, the people who are the best people, the loving people, the good people are the ones we lose. And I know that fiction is a place to pride, but I'm not going to write a book about war or about danger or about these tremendous forces at work without being honest about them. And that means experiencing loss. And I cry when I write those scenes. I've experienced tremendous loss and grief in my life, and I know there will be more of it, which is one of the worst things about experiencing loss, is that you know it's not the end of that. But I try to write that grief truly, but I'm not going to stop killing people. It's what I do.
It's kind of my thing.
You should put that on a t-shirt. I'm not going to
stop killing
It's what I do.
Then you won't need the Bluetooth when you walk around. People will be like, I'm just going to leave her alone anyway.
It's true. Oh, my poor neighbors.
I mean, I can relate to that, you know, knowing some of the losses.
That you're going to keep killing people, Aman?
No, I'm just saying, knowing personally, knowing some of the losses you've endured, you know, myself, losing my parents. Kathleen was talking about that she was in a sort of place when she read Six of Crows that really spoke to her.
Yeah, my dad had just died, and I needed an escape. And your books were my drug of choice, because the world was so rich and the people were so amazing that's where I wanted to live at that point.
That means a lot to me.
Yeah.
Wow, everybody in this chat has lost. That is the fuckery of getting older, I guess, but it's really hard. My bio dad is complete schmuck. Hope you're in the chat, buddy. But like, he's a complete schmuck. He's alive and well and living in the Galilee. Meanwhile, my stepdad, who was one of the best human beings I've ever known, and is maybe the only stable force that ever existed in my life, died when he was in his 60s, you know, which is young.
Yeah.
You know, I think it would be very strange to only read books where the worst people died. And in fact, the worst people rarely die in my books, because I want them to have prolonged suffering. So, you know, that for me is also, you know, death is easy, living is hard, as they say. And I'm grateful that they were a place to run to. There were certain books for me that, you know, especially growing up, were my comfort reads, and that I read again and again and again. And I almost rotated. So I would forget things that happened in them and I would come back to them and still be surprised and delighted. So being a comfort read would be a glorious thing.
Wait, what were some of those books?
Well, one of them is Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption by Stephen King, which is the story of a man wrongly imprisoned. But I was in high school and I felt like I was in jail. So, you know, like the story.
I have to tell you, the Shawshank Redemption, the movie, is like one of those movies for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but when they made that movie, I was super tense because I loved that novella so much. And I was really like, they're gonna fuck it up. You know, like it really was like on heavy repeat. Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones was a big one for me. And there's a short story by Louise Erdrich called Fleur, which was the first time I'd ever read magical realism. And also a story with a sexual assault survivor who wasn't presented as, you know, an inspirational tale, a tragic tale. It's an incredibly empowering, violent, fantastic story. And it was definitely one I came back to again and again.
We have another comment in the Q&A that's, I'm going to start reading it. If you wrote it, you're going to know that you wrote it, and tell us in chat if you want me to name you. But it says, not really a question, but I just wanted to say the way Nina is portrayed by herself and seen by others in the way that she's simply beautiful inside and out really helped me a lot. She's got curves and she owns them. As someone who has been bullied for the way I look and someone who struggles with body insecurities, the representation she gave me is so important. I can't explain it.
Thank you. Look, I'm fat. I have been fat most of my life. I've been different sizes. I've been a size 2 when I was in college and was in the grips of an eating disorder. I was a size 22 when I hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. There was an author popular author who used to refer to me behind my back as the fat cripple, which is cute. I know, that was my face too. And I was sad at first, but then I was like, that is so unoriginal. Like, it's like calling me a blonde mammal. Like, yeah, I'm a fat cripple. Ooh, you know, like, at least call me Stumpy or something. So I was just like, you know, I grapple with that pain and those anxieties myself. There are days when I don't feel my best. There are days when I feel like I'm fighting. But I will say the older I get, the stronger I get. And I do believe culture is changing. And I want to make it clear that, you know, I am a very successful, adored fat woman who has a wonderful partner, who helps me up hills and steps and never makes me feel crappy about it. And I wish that I fit into more cute clothes, but beyond that, I hope you have wonderful days and that you find a place of knowing that your value has nothing to do with what somebody thinks about the way you look. You are so much more than that, and fuck anybody who can't see that.
Wow, that's fantastic. There's Sienna Ryder has asked in both the chat and Q&A, and this is a great question. What inspired you to write and release Language of Thorns and the Lives of Saints? We love the in-depth background, but it's rare to get that. And it kind of goes back to the world building.
Really, because they let me, like, they don't let you do that with the first book. Like I wrote The Witch of Duva because they asked me to write something to promote Shadow and Bone. And I loved writing it. Like, I loved writing it. And I think I actually became a much better writer in the process of writing short stories. Like, I think if you're looking to improve your prose, like, that is maybe one of the best exercises you can do. I also love writing the fairy tale storyteller voice. Unlike my books, I don't plan out my short stories. The one exception is When Water Sang Fire, because it got so long that I started losing my place in it and had to sort of go back and structure it. But I sit in my bathtub, because you know I love a bath, and I just tell myself the story, and I tell it in this very like, oh, you know, come children, I'll tell you the story. And I love to have that kind of an omniscient voice. And if you notice in Language of Thorns, that voice changes depending on which country the story is set in, because there's very different attitudes towards magic and power and women and danger and all of those stories. But yeah, they let me do it. I wanted to write the Language of Thorns for a really long time. And I basically, I put a tweet out that was like, say, would anybody like this? And I went to my editor and was like, 20 people on Twitter would like to see this incredibly expensive book. So, and I was very fortunate because Noah Wheeler, who was my first editor, who I did the first 5 Grishaverse books with, she had done edited 3 of those stories. Erin Stein edited the 3 stories that went into Language of Thorns, the news stories. And she ran Imprint, which was they closed down because of the pandemic, which was pretty heartbreaking. But we had Ellen Duda, who was working there, who's this incredible artist, and Natalie Souza, who was the art director and who created and then Sarah Kippen, who did the illustrations themselves, and they made it so beautiful. Like it's such a beautiful object, and it weighs so much because there's so much art in it, so it is a valuable weapon as well. But it is I'm just so proud of it. And I know it's sort of like, you know, The Little Engine That Could, like it's not as popular as my other books. People don't read short stories that much, but I love the stories in that book. And I love how much work went into that book by so many talented women. So it's pretty great. And then Lives of Saints was like, there's no way they would have had me publish that if we didn't have the show coming, because it's such a weird book. It's this piece of ephemera from the world. And it does actually appear very briefly in the show, but you guys know how important that book is in the series. And it's sort of like, you know, the ultimate Easter egg for readers because they know the import of that. But I had said to them, they were like, well, do you just want to do it as a journal? We can just do the cover. And I was like, oh no, I'll write all the Saints' lives. And then I was like, what was I thinking? Like I had to write 30 like martyrdoms and miracles. And I was like, I wrote almost all of them on set, actually. I revised them when I got home, but I wrote almost all of them sitting in this dark tent with my hood up with my little laptop going when I was on set.
How long were you on set?
I was on set the second time for about a week. So I don't want to give the illusion that I wrote 30. I did not, but I wrote a lot of them in that time.
Wow.
It was this kind of, I wanted it to have some substance, you know? Like, I hate it when you're like, oh, I'm gonna get this thing from the show or this thing, you know, and it's just like, oh, it's a journal. Like, we did a journal and I think it's very beautiful, but like, I wanted to do something else. And I wanted people who really care about the lore of the world to be able to dive in and find the threads that connect all of these things. So people will recognize, you know, Sancta Ursula, they'll recognize her story and Ula's story from When Water Sang Fire, and Magda's story connects to the Witch of Duva, like, because I wanted people to be able to follow these through lines of the way stories get told and the way the line between religion and folklore and magic and history and truth and fiction get blurred. So it was a pain in the butt, but I'm glad I did it.
There are still, there's a lot of questions in the chat, but there's one, I think there's one last one that I kind of want to pull because it kind of looks towards the future. And it's from Manasa Bopudi. And sorry if I mispronounced that. Do you have any advice for teenagers who want to be strong and confident like Inej, Kaz, and so many of the other Grishaverse characters?
Look, all I would say is that our culture is garbage and it does terrible things to the minds of young people and old people for that matter. You have to remember that you're at war. You're at war every day with people who want to sell you shit and make you feel like garbage so that they can sell you more shit, okay? So when you get these messages that make you feel bad about yourself or make you feel weak or make you feel like you're something less than what you can be, you have to remember that those messages are coming from people who have an ulterior motive. Unfollow them, ignore them, find people who make you feel strong and amazing, find your people who don't just tolerate you, but think you are just the best. Like, it may take some time. I thought I was a sociopath before I went to college because I didn't get along with anybody. But you know, it takes time, but you will get there and you will find those people. And it's a fight. It's a fight every day, but I do believe culture is changing, and I hope that there will be stories and people who inspire you and make you feel good and strong, and that you will put anybody who doesn't right into the airlock and send them into space. So. And also, somebody just asked me, what's the book you think everybody should read? I've seen that question come up a few times. I don't really have one, but I can tell you one of my favorite books that nobody reads, it seems like, is Shadow Hero by Jean Luen Yang. Jean's other work is incredible. He wrote Boxers and Saints. He is an incredible writer, incredible human being, but it's like his undiscovered treasure. It's about the first Asian superhero, and it's absolutely delightful, and it's great for reluctant readers. Like, if you have somebody in your life who maybe doesn't love to read, any of Jean's books are fantastic, and I recommend them highly.
Amazing.
Okay.
Well, thanks for finding us. You got to school and found your tribe. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for your time.
Thank you guys.
So Leigh, this has been amazing. We're so grateful. We know that you have 80 bajillion different demands on your time.
Loved it. Thank you everybody who came. Thank you, Aman. Thank you, Kathleen. And we should definitely do like a spoiler-filled chat after the show airs. I hope you guys will tune in. And I guess we don't see. Do you tune in anymore? For stream?
We'll stream in.
Stream in.
Dive in.
But no, I would love to do, because that was the thing about this chat, was like, we're like, okay, well, we can't talk about the show because no one's seen it, and we don't want to spoil too much, you know, for people that haven't seen the show and haven't read all the books. We can't, you know, so it would be great to chat again after the show.
Okay.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
About maybe another time about Ninth House, and we love you, and I can't believe it's next week.
I know, I'm freaking out. So I'm gonna go and take a nap. No, I'm gonna take a bath and then I'm gonna take a nap.
Oh wait, before you go, we have Belinda from YaleWomen. She just wanted to come on and, you know, say thank you and maybe say a little bit more about YaleWomen, who YaleWomen and Yale in Hollywood were sort of our gracious, they hosts, that helped us put this together. Hi.
Hi everyone. No, thank you. I just want to say, no, thank you, Aman, Kathleen, especially Leigh, for being so gracious with your time. YaleWomen is very happy to co-sponsor this event. I think we try to be a community that cultivates a safe and inspiring place for people to connect, to share their voice in their platform, and amplify their influence. And Leigh, you are no exception to that. Thank you for being a critical voice to your readers. I think what I took away from this was the advice that you give, that there's no expiration on your talent, and for people to continue on their path, whether that's writing or anything that they believe that they are good at. And so thank you all for your time. This is an amazing event. Can't wait to host more. Oh, and then obviously with a shameless plug here, I think the past year has been challenging for all of us. YaleWomen puts on virtual series events such as these. So if you enjoy this, we have more events like this in the future. So you can go ahead and visit YaleWomen.org.
Thank you.
So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Great.
Thank you. So a couple people asked if they can watch this again later. Aman has been streaming this on his Facebook page. And
Yeah.
Aman, do you want to, go ahead.
Sure. I'm Aman Creates on social media, on Facebook, Twitter. I'll bring my dog up now since this is over, and she's been very patient. But I'm Aman Creates on social media. So if you go to Facebook, this has been streaming live to facebook.com/Aman Creates. But then just watch those spaces. Also at Kathleen Wallace, watch, to find out about the next chat. And also, we'll post this on YouTube as well. So if you just look for Aman Creates on YouTube, the previous chat with Matt Shackman is there, and then this will be there too, to share with your friends and other fans of the Grishaverse.
Like us, which is how this started. Aman and I were nerding out together, and we're like, we need to talk to Leigh. So he says, please pet Daisy for me. Daisy has fans now, Aman. I think Daisy's going to need her own.
Well, and there's Mika in the back. She's a lot more mellow. They're sisters. Okay, thank you everyone for coming, and we will see you next time after the show at some point to discuss the show full of spoilers.
Full of spoilers. Thanks, everybody.